Hey guys, welcome back. TJ Vitens, the strategic real estate team. Today we're actually going to be going over the Wisconsin residential offer to purchase. It's actually a full 9 pages long. We're just going to kind of try and make a quick video of it. Obviously, the shorter the video, probably the better. We don't want to bore the heck out of you. So we're just going to kind of touch on some of the major points. The key thing to remember is that the blank lines that are actually in the offer to purchase, that's where you're filling in the terms of what you're offering the seller. And then all the other stuff, we'll touch on some of it, but that's the legal stuff, basically to protect you and protect the seller. It explains what happens when if you defaulted and just walked away, or if the seller said they didn't want to sell to you. So let's just jump right in here and enjoy. Okay guys, so here we have the Wisconsin residential offer to purchase. If you're actually watching this on our website, right below this video there should be a little PDF download link so you can download this and either go through it with us, or if you can't sleep tonight, you can read through it and it'll probably help you fall asleep. So as you can see right on top, we have the date here that we're going to write in, that we're writing the offer. We got to put the buyer's name in. For the buyer's name, you want to put in there however you want to take title to the property. So for myself, if I wanted it to be TJ Vitens, I would just put TJ Vitens. If I wanted my middle name in there or just my middle initial, I'd have to write that in there. So just make sure you put in the buyer as the way you want to take title to the property. Next, we're going to put in the street address. After that, we're going to move right on down to the purchase price here on line 8. Line 10, we talk about earnest money. Earnest money, some people don't know what it is. If you've seen some of our other videos, we actually talk about what it is. Earnest money is money that you're going to send along with the offer, just telling the seller that you're serious about buying the house. So if you send $100 in earnest money, that's not very serious. If you send $1,000, $10,000, obviously we're getting a lot more serious here. It all kind of depends based on what the price of the house is. So on line 14 through 16, we're actually going to be talking about what kind of things are included in the purchase price. So this is where you would put in things like the washer, dryer, refrigerator, stove, any other items in the house, if there are window coverings, things like that. If there are things that were not included in the purchase price, that line 17 through 18, that's where we'd write that. Line 23, 27 kind of talks about acceptance. Acceptance happens when both parties have signed off on the offer. 27 is, let's say you write this offer on Monday the 1st, and we put binding acceptance of Wednesday the 3rd. If the sellers don't sign this offer until the 4th, it means that this offer is no good anymore. So they have to sign this by the 3rd if you put a binding acceptance date of the 3rd. The bottom part, 34 through 55, talks about how you can deliver the documents. So obviously we could hand deliver the offer to someone. We could FedEx or UPS it. We could send it through a fax. We could do US mail or email. And then 50 through 55 is obviously, that's where we're putting the recipient's information for email and whatnot. So let's move on to page 2. So page 2 is going to talk about occupancy. Obviously you can't occupy it until the time of closing or after closing. This whole next section is going to talk about conditions affecting the property. And the seller is actually going to fill out a condition report and answer each one of these questions, but it's also in the offer so that you can kind of go through it at the same time. So page 3, we're going to talk about the closing. So closing is going to be no later than, this is when you're going to write in that you want to close by. You can obviously close before that if you both agree to it. The next part, we're talking about closing prorations. This is where we're going to talk about how the taxes will be prorated at closing. So obviously this kind of makes a difference, depends on if you're buying new construction, the house is built, if it's not built yet, if it's an existing house. Obviously each situation depends and it differs for each person. So okay, so the next section actually talks about leased property and the rental weatherization. It actually has to deal with more multifamily unit property, so we're not going to get into it right now. The next part is going to talk about the real estate condition report, and actually right down on the bottom it's going to say that the real estate condition report dated this date and that you've had a chance to review it. So make sure you've actually had a chance to review it if you initial off on this. Here, additional provisions and contingencies, this is where you could write in some things, maybe if you needed to have a well test or a septic test, any other kind of thing that you would want to have taken care of here. So maybe you want the carpets to be cleaned before closing, you could write that in there. For this whole next page, so we're on page 4 now, we're talking about different items as far as when a deadline is and how days run and count. I'm just going to kind of breeze through some of this stuff just so this video isn't extremely long, but if you want to sit down and go over this in more detail, or if you have any questions about it, feel free to email me or call me anytime. So next we're talking about what a defect is. A defect is actually something that's going to adversely affect the value of the property. Then we're talking about fixtures, and obviously a fixture is something that's physically attached to the property, so make sure if there's anything where it could be iffy, like if you see exterior lights, like I know those solar ones that people just plop in the ground, if you want those to stay, make sure you write that kind of stuff in the offer. Then we're going to talk about property dimensions and surveys. This just says that the buyer acknowledges that you shouldn't rely on the seller for the dimensions, and if you want to know a certain room size, you should go verify it yourself. So next we'll move on to line 204, where we talk about the buyer pre-closing walkthrough. What that is 3 days before closing, you have the opportunity to walk through the property. If there's any damage that's been done to the property and it's less than 5% of the value of the property, the seller can fix that, and then you're going to continue on with the sale. If the damage goes over 5% of the property, then obviously you have the right to back out of the offer, basically, or you can tell the seller to fix it and you can still buy if you want. So that's what this whole last part of the page is about. So now if we move on to page 5, this is where we talk about our financing contingency. So this is kind of a big part, so maybe we'll spend a little bit more time on this, but line 219, you're going to check that if you're getting a loan, which most people are. So you're going to write in there over on the right hand side what type of loan you're going to get, and then you're going to get that, typically we're going to say within 30 days right here. And then the financing term, you're going to put the amount of the loan that you need, amortized, or for 30-year loan, typically amortized over 30 years. I guess it all depends on your situation. So typically though, you put the loan amount here for not less than 30 years, amortized over 30 years, and then you figure out what your monthly payment is, you fill that in, and then we're going to move down and fill out our fixed rate financing part, or if you're getting an adjustable rate loan, we'll fill that in. The whole important part of this section of the offer to purchase is, this is what you're telling the seller that you're trying to get a loan for. If you put really unfavorable terms in here, like let's say you've got a $200,000 house, you're getting a $200,000 loan, and you're saying I only want a 2% loan on it, that looks like garbage to the seller basically. But if you're getting a $200,000 house, you're getting a $100,000 loan, and you're saying you'll go up to 10% as an interest rate and still buy the house, that looks amazing. And this is important because the last bottom half of the page is going to talk about what the seller can do. Basically, if you go to the seller and say, hey, I couldn't get the loan terms that I had put in the offer right up here, then the seller essentially has 10 days here to try and find you those same financing terms. Basically, it's a way for the seller to make sure that you're not just lying and backing out of the deal because you don't want to buy it. So I've only seen this happen one time, so does it typically happen? No, but you still want to be serious and honest and just be realistic with what you're putting in for the type of loan that you're going to get. Next, we're going to put in an appraisal contingency. Obviously, you can't get a loan unless the property appraises. So we'll move on to page 6 here. Distribution of information just talks about allowing us to share information. Obviously, copies of maybe the appraisal or the title insurance has to be provided to different people. Obviously, we'll have to provide this offer to purchase to your lender if we get it accepted. The next part we're going to talk about what happens if the buyer defaults, what happens if the seller defaults. So basically, if the buyer defaults, you're going to lose your earnest money, or they could sue you for actual damages if they lose out on anything. If the seller says they're not going to sell, you can get your earnest money back and try and sue them and make them sell the property. This is the entire contract right on line 301. There's no verbal offers or anything. Everything's in this offer and has to be in writing. If there's anything else that's included in this offer, we want to make sure we include it in an amendment so that everyone can see it. Line 304 is going to go on to talk about the sex offender registry. If you want to go look anybody up or see the area that you're about to buy in, if there is any offenders in that area, that's the website and phone number. The next part is talking about the closing of the buyer's property contingency, and this has to deal with if you're buying a second home and you have to sell your home first. So this is where you would say, we want to buy your property, but we have to sell ours first. And then it's going to go on to talk about the secondary offers. Time is of the essence. This talks about, it's just saying that make sure you meet the dates and deadlines. So if you say you're going to get somebody earnest money within 3 days, you get it to them in 3 days. If you say you're going to have the inspection done within 8 days, you get it done within 8 days. The next whole part is going to talk about title, basically. And essentially all this is going to say is that the seller has to give you clear title to the property, or obviously you're not going to be able to buy the house. So, and they're going to pay for title insurance. The important part here, we're going to look at line 346. Talks about gap endorsement, and that's basically the time between the closing of the property and when the title, the deed, actually goes over and gets recorded. There's going to be a day to 3 days in there where potentially the seller could go and try and take out a second mortgage or put some type of lien on the property. That's covering that timeline, so we usually ask the seller to pay that. Obviously you wonder why this is in here. I always wonder that because I can't imagine somebody doing that, but obviously somebody did at one point, so that's why there's a gap endorsement insurance now. So if down on the bottom here it talks about if title is not acceptable, the seller can have and extend it another 15 days essentially to try and clear the title if you want to give it to them. So if we move on to page 8 here, we'll see if there's any special assessments or anything, how that's prorated at closing. Then we're going to talk about how the earnest money is held and how it's dispersed. Again, it's going to go into the legal rights and actions. Next, this whole bottom part of the page is going to talk about inspections and testings, and it actually goes on to page 9 where you can write in your inspection contingency. So if you check this box, basically it gives you the right to have a Wisconsin registered home inspector in the house to do an inspection of the property. If there's any other types of inspections that you want to have done, you want to write them right in this section right here. So if you want to have a radon test done, if you want to have a roofing contractor come out, a foundation contractor come out, you want to make sure that you write that in this section right here. So, and then down on line 423, that's where we're going to say how much time we're going to give the seller, or the seller is going to give us to do the actual inspection. You'll see anywhere from 7 to 14 days, I guess. Line 429 is kind of a big one. It talks about the right to cure. That has to deal with if the inspector finds any problems with the property. If you give the seller the right to cure, then they can fix anything that the inspector comes up with and you still have to buy. If you don't give them the right to cure, and there's a problem with the property and you don't want to buy it, you don't have to then. So this is the offer to purchase. I know I kind of breezed through it really quick. We go into more detail when we actually sit down to write it, but that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions, concerns, or would like to actually sit down and go over an offer to purchase, feel free to email me, tjvitense@kw.com, or you can always call me 608-576-0044. And remember, when you think real estate, think strategic.